Is it actually dangerous to eat too many morels? Well, according to the claims made public in a recent news story, you can, but is there any basis for what they're saying? In this video, I'm going to show you everything that you need to know. In one of the stories, over 50 people got sick and 2 died from eating morels served at a sushi restaurant. In another, a man died from eating morels on a canoeing trip. These are 2 news stories that are getting massive attention right now that we need to talk about because, as always, there's more to it. There are a few things that you absolutely have to understand about the underlying cases in order to learn from them. We're going to talk about the potential of morels containing a toxic chemical that is used as rocket fuel. We'll talk about the claim that these toxins can bioaccumulate in your body. We'll talk about the potential confusion with gyromitra or false morels, and weigh the validity of all of these possibilities. My name is Jesse. I am a forager. I am passionate about wild food, and in this video, I'm going to try to get ahead of the wave of morel fear-mongering that is sure to come. Before we get started, I just want to give my deepest sympathies to the families that were affected by these cases. An unexpected death like this is a terrible hardship, and I want to make sure that I establish that my words do not seek to diminish that in any way. What I am frustrated by, though, is the way in which at least one of these stories has been presented to all of you. I think in an effort to prevent this from happening to someone else, more harm was done than good in the information that was put out, and I actually hope to see it retracted. So today, I would like to sort fact from speculation from pure falsehood. One of the videos has racked up over 650,000 views. I asked all of you in a poll on my community page if you had seen this. Some of you had and others had not. So I'm glad that for many of you, you can watch this video first to get the full context, but I'll link the one that I'm covering in the description. Let's first look at the case that happened at a sushi restaurant. Here, from March to April of 2023, 51 people reported foodborne illness from eating dishes served with morels in them. Upon further investigation, it was found that some of these morels were being served nearly uncooked to completely raw. If that doesn't ring alarm bells to you, it should. Here is the first takeaway from this video. Don't eat morels raw, ever. In fact, I generally don't advise anyone eating any mushroom raw as well. Any mushroom. Unfortunately, at least in North America, baby bella mushrooms, Agaricus bisporus, are commonly served raw in salads, leading many people to believe that mushrooms across the board are safe to eat in this way. And don't worry, we're going to talk more about that a little bit later. The CDC did a thorough investigation of this case. They looked into the possibility of environmental toxins, of heavy metals, of bacterial-based toxins, and other common sources of food poisoning, and they found none. In their assessment, they conclude with a high degree of confidence that the source of the issue was the fact the morels were raw. I do think it's important here to note that for the 2 people out of the 50 that died, they both had other underlying conditions that likely led to the complications that were unfortunately deadly. For most, the mild to severe gastrointestinal distress that can arise from eating raw morels is not a major issue. But if there are other components at play, it can be life-threatening, as we see here. It's good, or I guess there's this kind of a silver lining, that we at least get a comprehensive assessment like this about morels. I think for the public and for foragers like you and me, knowing quite definitively that consuming raw morels is dangerous, knowing that is a good thing. I hope to see more required training for restaurants on this. But the second takeaway from this video is I would not recommend eating morels in a setting where you don't know who cooked them or how, like a restaurant. From the investigation, we found that the chef just had no idea that morels needed to be cooked. At this point in time, I wouldn't be surprised if there were hundreds of other chefs that didn't know that as well. So you can bet that I myself won't be ordering morels at a restaurant anytime soon. We move on to the case of a man who died from eating morels while on a canoeing trip. Right away, this one's going to be far more complex. Let me try to give you the background. The man was described as an avid forager. He had eaten morels without issue for years and foraged, preserved via dehydration, and cooked the morels that caused the issues that led to his death. The obituary gives the official cause of death as acute necrotizing gastritis due to consuming morel mushrooms, and that is peculiar to say the least. Medical professionals can weigh in here, but in my research, acute necrotizing gastritis is extremely rare, and I scoured the medical literature looking for another mention of this being due to consuming mushrooms, and I couldn't find any. So this is all quite strange. The mushrooms were cooked on a jet boil along with a pack of that quick cook rice stuff, and he ate them with a friend. They both developed gastrointestinal issues like vomiting, and diarrhea, and as a result, dehydration. But the friend eventually improved. This is going to be part of the third takeaway. So, what happened? We can't point the finger at raw morels this time, so we don't have quite as clear of an answer. I'll give you the reasons presented in the news story, and then I'll give my own speculation because, as you can imagine, they don't line up at all. A mycologist was brought onto the case as something of a consultant in the story. She suspected several things. First, that because they were cooked on a jet boil, they could have been undercooked to a degree. I agree with this. And second, that morels may contain hydrazinic compounds. We'll talk about what that is in a moment. And third, that hydrazinic compounds bioaccumulate in the body. Okay, so what is a hydrazinic compound? Some mushrooms, namely Gyromitra, often called false morels, contain compounds that break down to toxic hydrazine chemicals in our body that can be quite dangerous. The compound in Gyromitra is aptly named gyromitrin, and it breaks down to monomethylhydrazine. Gyromitrin is volatile, water-soluble, and heat-sensitive. So if it is boiled in water, it will break down to monomethylhydrazine there. And monomethylhydrazine has a boiling point that is below water. So if it's in there, it will just evaporate off. However, if gyromitrin is directly ingested, it will instead break down to monomethylhydrazine in your stomach, and this would be a big issue. I'll share about a group where you can learn more about all of this in a second. While it has been speculated that gyromitrin is present in dangerous amounts across the genus of Gyromitra, this study found it to be far more localized, mainly just around the Gyromitra esculenta group and Gyromitra leucocantha. And this is where it should be noted that around the world, certain species of Gyromitra are consumed after cooking thoroughly, just like morels. One example is Gyromitra montana, which I myself have consumed with my friend Orion from Foraged, Colorado. And I live to tell you the tale that they were actually delicious. Don't do this unless you know what you're doing. There's a great Facebook group called False Morels Demystified that you can join to learn more about all of this if you'd like. So, does the true morel contain gyromitrin or another hydrazinic compound? The answer is, we do not know. At the time of making this video, if someone tells you that they do, or you read some dumb website generated by ChatGPT, seriously, they left it in the bottom, that it was made by ChatGPT, all of this is speculation at best. It is not a known fact. It would seem logical that we would speculate on true morels containing a chemical that is found in the morphologically similar false morels. However, if we dig into the actual taxonomy of Morchella and Gyromitra, they aren't even in the same family. Their closest relationship is a level up at the order level. For a comparison, that would be like worrying about the presence of deadly cardiac glycosides in mints because they are in the same order as Foxglove digitalis. Seems pretty ridiculous, doesn't it? And again, the investigation that we looked at before into the presence of gyromitrin in the Lorchel family that Gyromitra are a part of concluded that, quote, "We clarified that gyromitrin production in Dissinaceae is both discontinuous and more limited than previously thought." So to me, the only basis for speculation like this would be the presence of another hydrazinic compound way over in a different part of the fungi kingdom, in members of the genus Agaricus called agaritine. So here's my question. If you are going to speculate on the content of a hydrazinic compound in a wild mushroom like morels, why would you not also include the potential danger in agaricus mushrooms that are far more common and available in grocery stores? I don't understand. Further, and I think this is what bothered me the most, where did you come up with the claim that hydrazinic compounds bioaccumulate in the body? Did you Google it? Probably not, because if you had, you would find that the opposite is true. Since monomethylhydrazine is used industrially, its safety has been investigated in depth for a while. Every reference that I found, and they are easy to find, specifically states that they do not bioaccumulate. This claim was attempted to be used as a way for explaining why the man that died had a far worse reaction than the friend, going off of the logic that the person that died had consumed them in large amounts over the course of several years, so the toxin accumulated. But if you ask me, I would tell you this argument holds little to no weight. From one of the top comments on the news video, we can clearly see the effect of the incorrect information. The commenter states, I can't even say how many pounds of morels that I've foraged and eaten in my life. I think I've had enough now. Because, of course, you've made them fearful of toxins accumulating in their body. But again, there is absolutely no good evidence to back this claim up. This is what's so frustrating. This is why I knew I needed to make this video. Before I get into my thoughts, I would say that the third takeaway from this video is that you should avoid consuming morels in situations where having severe gastrointestinal symptoms could be difficult to deal with, like camping in remote areas. Here's another thing. It would be irresponsible of me not to discuss the cases of toxicity of consuming morels that have, at least reportedly, been cooked well. There is an excellent article written by Joseph Picaras in Fungi magazine that explores this further. Now, these particular cases have never been known to result in serious injury or death and were more mild comparatively speaking. The symptoms involved usually resolved within hours to, at the most, days. From this report, we gain insight into several new points. First is the possible development of allergies to mushrooms from instances of eating them raw or undercooked. This is one that I was not that aware of actually, and it's discussed a little bit more in the fungi article, which will be in the description, and also a video by Mushroom Wonderland, which interviews Dr. Michael Bugh.
There is a history of people dying from morels, even cooked, if they become severely allergic. So the first time you have a bad reaction to morels, it's probably a good idea to quit eating it.
I'll link it below as well as the rest of my resources. Be sure to check them out. He has a great channel. The development of allergies from eating raw mushrooms reminds me of the cases where people develop allergies to mammalian meats from a toxin that entered their body via tick bites. It's not that the meat itself is toxic, it's just that your body has associated it with another toxic compound. Next, we see these cases appear more prevalently in freshly collected morels than in dried ones. But when we mean dried, I must emphasize, dried with proper storage. If morels or any other mushrooms are not dehydrated thoroughly and stored correctly and kept free of insects, an opening for external toxins or molds is created. Based on everything that I've seen in the surrounding case, my best guess would be that the consumption of improperly stored morels combined with undercooking them was the big source of the issue, but again, that is just my speculation. A lot of people have suggested that all this was just a misidentification of false morels, but I really don't think so. A person with his level of experience would have been able to distinguish the two easily. So, could it have been something to do with the morels themselves? Well, it is possible. And when something like this happens with a wild food, everyone comes out of the woodwork to attempt to vilify it, and I just have to point out the hypocrisy of this. Mutations due to wild crossings can occur in garden zucchini and squash, resulting in the production of excessive bitter toxic compounds. Foods that you and I buy from the grocery store every single day are recalled due to contamination with bacterial pathogens like Salmonella or E. coli. Sure, you could say that it's a little bit different. The morel toxin could be due to the morel itself, but with the food contamination it's more external. But for all we know, some of the toxicity with cooked morels could be environmental as well. But regardless, in both of these scenarios, the incidence is rare, it's relatively random, and it's difficult to predict. You can go on the CDC's website right now and look at several ongoing outbreaks. What's more, look through the previous outbreaks. How many of them came and went without you ever knowing about them? Our society isn't familiar with wild food, so it tends to seek it out as a villain whenever cases like this occur. I will continue to do my best that I can to offer a different perspective and a clearer picture on these amazing wild species. So if there's anything that we've learned from this video, it's that morels should be cooked thoroughly. And I made a video with a somewhat unpopular take about a better way to prepare morels that will help you to cook them more without the risk of burning them. I think that you'll find it really helpful, and I hope to see you there.